Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new review here on the Outpost Unknown YouTube channel. My name is Matthew. We are going to be talking NOSFERATU tonight by, what was it, Robert Eggers? That's his name, right?
Yeah.
Joining me tonight is the wonderful Jennii Caroline, one of the stars of the new Collector's Edition short film, which everyone watching this should go check out. How are you doing tonight, Jennii?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
And Josh.
Hey,
I didn't get a
Josh.
cool intro and the other guy that did Collector's Edition, me.
And that
That's
guy.
right.
What did you
I'm
do on
here.
Collector's Edition? I don't remember. What did you do?
I moved a couple of lights and
That's
I
right.
held a boom one time. That's about it.
Okay.
It
Cool.
was
Cool.
neat.
All right. So that's all you need to know about Josh, everybody. So yeah, we're gonna do a review. We all saw Nosferatu at various times over the past few weeks. Some of us remember it more than others. Josh. So we're gonna talk about our thoughts and just sort of see where we stand. Was this the masterpiece that everyone claimed it was and everyone was anticipating? We're gonna check it out. So since Josh did not see the movie for a few weeks now and doesn't remember much of it, I'm going to toss it to you, Josh. Can you give just a general description of the plot of Nosferatu? What is Nosferatu all about?
Why would you ask me that? Why would you throw that to me, who literally said before we jumped in here, I don't remember this shit.
Because this is the internet and we're trying to get views and we're trying to be entertaining, and this is going to be semi-entertaining.
It's about a dude that needs to sell a castle to some other dude, and so that dude crosses the ocean to that castle, and he's like, "Oh, this castle looks dope as fuck," and so he buys that castle and settles down in it, and then he's really in love with this chick, so he goes and stalks her at night. And then apparently there's Dracula dick in it. So
Yeah.
the end.
All right. Thanks,
Did I
guys.
do good? Was that good? Was that right?
I think
Well-
you remember more than you're letting on. That's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, you were very specific about that dick, so that must have really stuck out in your mind.
Well, I got reminded that there was Dracula dick in there by Jennii. She was like, "How do you forget there's Dracula dick in this movie?" And I was like, "I don't know." So
I don't know.
Jennii, is there anything with the synopsis that he didn't throw out there that you would like to mention?
Yeah.
What's
so,
up with Lily Rose Depp's character? Like, who
so
is she? And
Lily
what's she doing?
Rose Depp plays Ellen, who is the wife of Thomas. And I think, I don't know, maybe I'm just forgetting, but this is actually the first time that I can recall seeing her in a film. I was really anticipating her to be amazing, and I actually was quite pleased with her acting and just overall everything. I thought she was perfectly cast. But a little bit about the background of her character is she's just like a really lonely, weird child, and she pledges herself eternally to, I guess, Count Orlok is what they call him, who is Nosferatu.
Yeah.
And
And then she's very horny the rest of the movie.
Yeah, they both are. I mean, I think
That's
everybody,
true.
the whole cast. No,
I feel like Jennii is showing off by remember characters' names, but whatever.
Whatever. Can't remember my lines on set, but I can remember these people's names.
Yeah. Yeah, and so basically the Nosferatu, of course, originally was kind of a ripoff of Bram Stoker's Dracula. They literally were like, "Hey, can we make the movie Dracula?" And Bram Stoker's widow said no, and so like, "Okay, we won't." And then they changed Dracula to Count Orlok, and they just a couple of slight differences, and then they got sued into oblivion in order to destroy all copies of it because even a judge was like, "This is just Dracula." So if you're familiar with the Dracula story, you're going to be familiar with the story of Nosferatu. Let's talk a little bit about the director, Robert Eggers. So this is his fourth film. I'll ask you, Jennii, have you seen any of his previous stuff? He did The Witch, he did The Lighthouse, and he did The Northman. Have you seen any of those movies?
I think I've only seen The Witch.
Okay. Were you a fan of that movie?
I can't remember. I can't remember. I was looking it up, and it's unfortunately such a generic title that I was kind of like, I can't think of which film this was, but I liked this film so much I will be going back and watching more of his stuff that
His
he's
stuff.
directed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, Josh, we with that really like controversial thumbs down you just gave to The Witch, you didn't like that movie?
No, I was not a fan of The Witch, which is again, I'm on the opposite side of everybody because that was like the number one movie of the year for horror fans when that movie came out. Everybody loved that movie. It just wasn't my cup of tea. That's just not my thing. Um, but he made The Lighthouse after that, and I loved The Lighthouse. That's probably my favorite Robert Eggers film. I thought The Northman was okay. And and Nosferatu is fine. But if somebody said, "Hey, what Robert Eggers movie should I start with?" I would point everybody to The Lighthouse. So it's great.
Okay. Yeah, and Robert Eggers is one of those filmmakers where every time he announces a new movie, you're like, well, I have to watch it. Even if it's not
Mhm.
your thing, because he's just visually such a creative, unique, interesting director. The stuff that he does with lights, like the lighting and sort of like the color grading, like some of these shots in Nosferatu, especially when Nicholas Holt's character is going up to Orlok's castle and it's all blue and you can see the snow in the background. It looks like it's from a painting or something. It just you watch his movies and you're like, this is very artistic. I might not understand what the hell's going on in some of his movies, but just every frame just looks like there's an artist behind it. Reminds
Mhm.
me of like a stop motion animation where you can look at stop motion animation from the 50s and 60s and stuff. You're like, oh, I mean, you can see the thing, but it's like, no, somebody was actually, an artist was doing that. An artist was spending hundreds of hours of their life trying to do this. And so the artistry comes through on all of that. So, Jennii, I'll throw it to you. Is there anything you wanted to add about the story of Nosferatu? Or if not, what are your feelings on it? How do you feel about this movie?
I really thought it was cast really interesting. The character Nicholas Holt. I had just seen him in another, vampire movie with Nicolas Cage.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, he was in that, wasn't he? What was that
yeah,
called?
and
Renfield.
It was Redfield, yeah,
Renfield.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Redfield.
Yeah.
so I already knew of him from that film, and I watch a series that he's in. But I hadn't really seen him play this type of character, so I thought it was kind of interesting. But I think they were. I don't know. I think he was well matched to be the character because he didn't come across as like overpowering to Depp's role because she kind of is like the saving grace of the whole thing, and he's kind of just scared, like he says, I just saw the devil and he's real
Yeah.
or he exists or whatever his line
He
is.
plays fear really well in the movie.
Yeah, he plays the part well, but he still seems like a small kind of fearful character, but is very aware of the power and you know the how scary meeting Nosferatu is and being stuck for lack of a better word, he just literally
Yeah.
like stuck at his castle. But I just thought that part was really crazy. But I really like the transition from, when they're showing they're living in this town in Germany. And then he goes on this crazy journey through all this wilderness and snow and these little crazy towns all the way to Transylvania. I thought that was really well portrayed as well. Quite a
Yeah.
journey. Mhm.
Yeah, I think that what I really, really like, because I did a list for Outpost Unknown. It was like I ranked 43 horror movies I watched throughout the entire year, and I think Nosferatu came in at number 14 for me.
Ooh.
I think it's a really good movie. I think it's a really good movie. There were just others that affected me much more than Nosferatu, but I don't think that this movie works. Like the more I think about it, it doesn't work if the actors weren't great. Because like Lily Rose Depp, she kind of carries this whole thing. Just the way like she can emote and stuff, and I had no idea she could act that well. I think I'd seen her in a couple things. Wasn't she in some sort of stupid Kevin Smith thing?
She
Um,
was in Yoga Hosers for sure, and she was in Tusk for like a scene. Yeah.
okay, yeah. So I'd seen her before, and I wasn't like I would have never thought that she could give a performance like that, and it was really, really, really impressive. I think that my main criticism of the film is that I've just seen this story so many times before. Because again, it's just Dracula, right? It's essentially
Mhm.
just Dracula, and it's a super well done version of Dracula. But when I walked into the movie thinking, because I was waiting to create my year end list till I saw this movie, because I was like, where's it going to fall? Is it going to be in the top 10? I need to know. Again, still really, really liked it, but I left the theater, and Josh, you and I kind of saw it together.
Mhm.
We left the theater and we're just kind of like, I didn't really feel much after it was over other than, wow, that was just really pretty and the actors did a good job. Whereas other films this year, like I left thinking like, um, gosh, I'm blanking. The Devil's, what was my number three or number two? I can't remember. The Devil's something that
Ghost
was on the
Bath.
show.
Ghost
Devil's
Bath.
Bath. Yeah. The Devil's Bath. I was
Yeah.
thinking the Devil's Advocate for some reason. I'm like, that's not the one.
Maybe.
The Devil's Bath. I left that film like shook, like wow, sort of thing. But yeah, Josh, your overall thoughts when you left Nosferatu, what were you thinking?
Yeah. So, um, part of the conversation that we had. So I had never seen the 1922 version. I have never seen the 1977, 79 version. So I had never seen any kind of version of this film. So this was my first take on it. Um, I was not mentally prepared to walk into a 2.5 hour long movie. It was way too long. It was there was a
Yeah,
lot that could have been cut of that movie. I feel like, and it could have been tightened up, and maybe the sit would have been a little bit easier. The one thing that Robert Eggers carries throughout all his films is you can feel how cold that movie is. Every movie has that same cold look to it. Nosferatu was no different. It's just everything is super cold, and and I like that he works with the same DP for every movie. He's from movie to movie to movie. He's worked with the same cinematographer, so they've established that look and that feel to all their movies. I think my favorite scene in that movie was the first scene that Thomas characters goes, and this is the first time he arrives at the castle, and he has that back and forth with Orlok. I think that's my favorite kind of scene in the movie, and that was really well just like done. Um, I was really excited for Bill Skarsgård. I like the stuff he's done generally, what he's done. So I was really excited for him in this role, and he just did not do it for me at all. And I was telling Matt, I was like, that goddamn, like, I've seen pictures of what Nosferatu is supposed to look like, just from the other movies. So I had this like idea of what he looked like in the movie, and that wasn't that wasn't it. And I was like, what's with that, like that stupid fucking mustache, and like what is going on with the straggly hair? And Matt had reminded me that Dracula had that mustache in the book, right? Maybe.
yeah, yeah.
Um, we had that
He was
conversation, and
described
I was
as
like,
having a mustache, yeah. And even Vlad the Impaler, if you see any paintings of him, he's got a big mustache.
Mhm.
yeah. So, but I was just like, why did they do that to him? And going back to both of what you guys have already said, Lily Rose Depp deserves a nomination for this movie. She was fantastic.
Oh yeah,
And, you know, another conversation that we had, and I've talked to other people about now, is I was really surprised that she took that role based on just like the sexuality of that role and the nudity that ended up being at the end of that movie, and just not knowing her to do those kinds of roles. And then somebody was like, well, did you watch The Idol on Max or whatever? And I was like, no. And apparently she's like that same thing in that show. But I didn't know her like to do those kinds of roles. So I was surprised that she had taken a role that was, you know, uh, that
very out there.
over sexualized in that
Yeah,
role.
very out
I was
there.
surprised she took that role. I also made a comment hoping that knowing her dad, I hope she does not get stuck in these weird uh, romantic gothic roles, in that she's
Mm,
done it, and now she can like she doesn't get stuck in this like Tim Burton Johnny Depp relationship where now she just takes on these weird
yeah.
gothic romance roles. Um, but look, I didn't hate that movie. I didn't love that movie. It's not on the bottom of my Robert Eggers list, but uh, it was. I was glad I saw it. If I give it a minute, I may try to do the sit again. But uh, it was okay for me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that this year in particular in horror, there have been a lot of actresses that have been doing like that you wouldn't necessarily expect, that have been doing nudity in very like really good roles. Like I don't know if either one of you saw The Substance yet with Demi Moore. I mean, she's like what, almost 60 or whatever, and she's doing like fully nude scenes in that. And then when you watch like that, I mean, that movie's amazing. I mean, it is absolutely amazing, but it's like this very sort of thing where we got to a point in horror films, mainstream horror films, where like, in the 80s, of course, it was nudity all the time. You go to a slasher film, you're going to see, oh, girls taking their tops off and stuff like that. In the 90s, horror got away from that, where it became like Scream and stuff like that. I Know What You Did Last Summer. And, it's like CW stars. And then like, you got away from the nudity aspect of it. And in the early 2000s, you would only kind of see that in more like harder grindhousey type of stuff. You might see it in foreign films and horror films and things like that from Europe particularly. And then it just kind of like went to no budget filmmakers, doing that to try to get attention for the films. But now it seems to be swinging back around to like actual really good actresses who are just like, hey, putting it out there, and it's like not people are not looking at them negatively for doing it, which I think is an interesting thing that's happening right now in the horror genre. Jennii, I want to ask you about Orlok himself. It's very, very controversial the way Orlok looks. And sort of, the penis thing was very controversial. The mustache, he's basically rotting throughout the whole movie. So he doesn't have the Dracula, where he's a vampire, and then he turns that suave debonair Victorian aristocrat that's wooing Winona Ryder and stuff like that. He looks really gross and nasty, and his voice is really cool. What was your take on Orlok? Did you find his look humorous and it kind of took you out of the film, or you didn't like it, or were you on board with what Eggers did with the look of Orlok?
So I was kind of confused by it. I'm not as familiar with Skarsgård, so I wanted to kind of see what he looked like. And with the mustache and the whole rotting thing, it kind of looked like a lot of special effects or AI or something involved. So I don't know. The movie was really dark colored, set dark to me, so I
Yeah.
could barely see him. Um,
It doesn't
and I
even look
thought,
anything like him with all the process. You would never even know that he was
yeah,
acting
I
in
was.
that role.
I mean, he gave me like a trucker vibe, so I was kind of like,
Oh,
oh, okay, this is odd. And then, like when he's like doing his sensual scenes and stuff, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but while he did have a vampire penis, his ass was all bones. Did you see that shot when they turned it
I
around
did
during one
not
of the
see his
scenes?
bony ass. No. Did you,
You
Josh?
missed it. No.
Oh
Yeah,
my
no, it
god.
was so weird. I was like, oh, that's so weird. But I think they made it off putting on purpose to just kind of make Lily's part as Ellen just that much more sexualized and weird because she's like moaning and stuff this whole time to this rotting guy with the trucker look. So I
Yeah.
think it was purposefully kind of more off putting to give a creepy vibe, so that we can't possibly relate to why she's horrified, but kind of also, in a way, almost just in love with this guy because he's been there for her forever, eternally or
Yeah.
whatever.
Do
But
you
yeah,
feel
I thought,
like do you feel like that's something the film did not do well, was kind of explain the that core, because essentially the whole sort of story of how she calls out to him in lust form is like the opening scene of the film,
mhm.
essentially. Did you feel like the film kind of failed in really establishing, like, as an audience member, can I really buy that this girl is like so infatuated and in love with this creature of the night visually, or did you feel like the film kind of they did what they needed to do to get you to buy that?
Yeah, I felt like a little bit of the connections there were missing and were kind of left to the viewer. So, I mean, you could go down a couple different routes where I thought for a while when they said she was having these episodes that she was actually maybe like schizophrenic or something. And then they just don't really show enough background like how like if this happened to her at such a young age, it would have been nice to have a few scenes of her kind of growing up with this vampire guy in her life, instead of it kind of suppressing for some time when she meets and her husband and gets married. And then they don't really explain that she was well for a while when her husband's there. I don't know if you kind of caught that, but
Yeah,
when he
yeah,
leaves,
she gets better.
everything's out of control. I thought that was could have been explained a little bit more. Because yeah, he was really off-putting, and I would not want that guy sneaking over every night. He's kind of
You
gross.
don't want that 70s porn stash all up in your
No,
business.
no.
Cool. Okay, well, let's go ahead and give our final thoughts on this. I really, really like this movie. I think it's very, very good. Didn't quite crack my top 10 of the year, but visually, it's just gorgeous. As someone who's really into just the visual aesthetics of film, it was just a pleasure to kind of sit there and watch it. Again, my only real critique of it comes from the fact that I've just seen the story so many times, the same sort of Dracula Nosferatu love story sort of thing. But other than that, I mean, I think a horror fan should go watch it for sure. Definitely check it out. I think it's definitely worthy to be seen, and should, if you can see it on a big screen, if it's still playing by the time anyone's watching this in their theater, definitely go see it on a big screen. I think it probably plays better with like the Gothic castles and all of that stuff. So yeah, if I'm going to give this a letter grade, I'm probably going to give Nosferatu a solid B. A B. So, Jennii, your final thoughts and a letter grade for Nosferatu.
So I did really like it. I think I'm just like already a big fan of Nicholas Hoult, and of course Willem Dafoe. But
Oh yeah,
Lily
we didn't even
Rose,
talk about Willem Dafoe. Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's what drew me in. Seeing him in the trailer, I'm like, oh my god, Willem Dafoe's in it. I absolutely have to go. But I mean, I could watch Nicholas Hoult do nothing for a month maybe, and that maybe I'm saying too much. He's gonna probably have me blocked somehow. But just
You
finding
would have
out that
rather him have been Nosferatu.
I think in a way, maybe sometimes I kind of thought about that a little bit, but that'll get way too long anyhow. I really just was so impressed with Lily Rose Depp. I'm looking forward to seeing anything else that she's in. I'm definitely going to be watching, and I highly recommend seeing it in the theater. You get that whole gothic vampire vibe, and it's just beautiful. Really well done. And I'm going to give it an A minus only because I thought it was lacking just a little bit of background development, but I really loved the characters and the cast.
Yeah. They should have just piped ice cold air into the theater while everyone was watching that. That would have been a really cool experience just because it's so cold. Josh, your
Yeah.
your thoughts and your final letter grade.
Yeah. So probably my third favorite Robert Eggers movie. I feel like any Robert Eggers movie you should just see in the theater on the big screen. It's just the kind of films he makes are worth seeing on the big screen. Bill Skarsgård was originally cast in that Thomas role 10 years ago when they were originally going to do it. And then, yeah, they didn't do it. And 10 years later, he got Orlok instead. But I thought I think it would have been interesting to have heard him do or seen him do that Thomas role. Yeah, I said probably my third favorite Robert Eggers film. It was fine. I'm going to give it a C plus for that 2.5 hour runtime because it murdered my soul. So yeah,
You need to learn how to just enjoy a nice long movie, Josh. That's always a critique of you. You're like, the movies are way too long.
every movie I swear to God is 2.5 hours long. And as a non-editor and as a barely filmmaker, even I can sit there and watch a movie and go, that could have gotten cut. That was just lazy editing. Let's just be honest. It was just being lazy. Cut your movie down. People have shit to do.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you make because as you and I are filmmakers, and Jennii, I'm sure you can also sort of relate to this as well because you've been in so many movies. You start watching it, and it's like, I know what the process is. Like, you could chop this down, but then I've been in situations where I'm like, I could cut this out, but I like it too much.
Yeah, exactly.
It just looks too cool, and like I want the actors to be able to see the scene that they're in because it's cool. Objectively, if someone were to come out and be like chop, 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 maybe it would be better. But it's like, look, we got this cool shit. We want to put it up on screen so people can see it. You know,
Yeah.
we might get Josh to bitch about it on a review on Outpost Unknown. 2 years later, but we don't care about Josh. We just made him suffer through all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you, everybody. That's another review here on Outpost Unknown. Hopefully, we'll have more in the future. I know I am planning to go see The Wolfman at some point here, so I don't know
I'm
how interested
seeing
you
it this
two
weekend.
are.
I'm seeing it
Okay,
this weekend.
so we'll definitely probably do. Are you going to see The Wolfman, Jennii?
Yeah, I think I'm seeing it Friday.
Okay, cool. So we'll do a review or something of The Wolfman because I'm definitely going to go see that as well. Now, that's going to be something where I will be looking at it with a critical eye because I am a huge fan of the original Wolfman and even the Anthony Hopkins Benicio del Toro initial
Yeah.
remake, 2010 or 2011, something around
Mhm.
there. I really love that one, even though it gets a lot of shit. So hit that like and subscribe. Pretend that you are Orlok and Lily Rose Depp is the like and subscribe buttons, and you're just getting down in there. Make sure you press those buttons, and I don't know where I'm going. Cut the end.